I am a huge fan of the Art Nouveau art style, and even though it's having a little bit of a resurgence at the moment, it can still be really difficult to find stickers in the Art Nouveau style. So for my August bullet journal theme, I made a few stickers of my own, and I'm mixing and matching them with some PET tapes and some stickers from my collection to make something Art Nouveau inspired, but maybe not perfectly historically accurate. Hi, my name's Erin, and I seem to be moving backwards in time because the Art Nouveau era happened in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, and last month in my bullet journal I made a theme inspired by Art Deco, which is from the 1920s onwards, so I seem to be regressing. I went ahead and made a bunch of sticker sheets for myself for this setup. I used Canva to source the artwork for those, changed the colours to some that I wanted for my theme, pulled them into Cricut Design Space, printed them out, and then cut them into Kiss Cut stickers. I'm going for a green and pink theme for my colour scheme this time around, which is helped along by my lace PET tapes. These ones are from the Baroque Lace PET tape set from the Washi tape shop. I knew this was a set of tapes that I would never want to get rid of. I would definitely want to use up, so I unrolled them onto a card so they'd be easier to store. Last month for July, I fully designed my cover spread within Canva, and I loved how it looked, although I cut that one out of Cricut vinyl rather than sticker paper. By this point, I am well over sticking vinyl into my journal. It was just a very fiddly process, so I knew I wanted to just go with stickers this time around, like a regular old paper sticker, although I did still really struggle with this giant frame that I decided I wanted for my cover spread. I probably could have made it a touch smaller, if I'm being honest, but I did want it to take up most of the page. It was a little difficult to wrangle, and the top of the sticker stuck itself down to the page before I was ready and happy with the placement, and it ripped up some of the paper when I peeled it back up to put it in the correct place, so I have a little bit of damage control to do up the top here. I'm just trimming off the extra paper that it ripped up and brought with it. Not the end of the world or anything, but definitely a little annoying. And I made this vertically oriented August header that is all individual stickers, so it's a little tricky to get them in the right spot. I'm actually just repositioning the paper from before I peeled off the frame and eyeballing it and placing down the sticker in approximately the right spot. And you know what? The effect is what I was going for, so that's a pretty good way to do it. I'm under a little bit of a time crunch at the moment. I just have a lot of stuff on my to-do list, so I wanted to have a really beautiful August theme, but I also wanted it to be very quick and easy to set up. Hence the DIY stickers. I've really been enjoying the Cricut lately. It has been great for this purpose. It does take a little bit of extra time off camera to put together the digital assets in order to make them into stickers, but I feel like I gained that time back in the setup process because this was pretty speedy, this layout. A typical bullet journal setup for me from start to finish can take anywhere from 3 to maybe 8 hours, depending on how involved it is and if it's for the mystery journal and how many elements I'm using. Typically it is a little bit faster for my own journal because there are just less pages involved than setting up the mystery journal. For a little bit of contrast, this one only took about an hour and a half. Originally, I was just planning to use all of the stickers that I made myself, but I came across a few things in my collection that were just too perfect a match for color and vibe, so I decided to expand things out a little bit, and that is a bit more in line with my usual style too, so I'm very happy with where we've ended up. I wanted my quote to be something obviously that resonates with me, because what's the point of having a quote in your journal if not, but also something that was kind of era appropriate, so I went with a Victor Hugo quote that reads, "To love beauty is to see light," which felt extra appropriate to me as a photographer. We've moved on to the calendar spread now, and I actually set up this theme quite soon after editing the video for my August mystery journal setup, and I think you can actually see quite a bit of the calendar spread from that setup in this one, because I've ended up using a very similar layout even when it comes to where I've placed my decorations. But when a spread works, it works, and so I'm not going to question it. I've made my calendar boxes 4 dot grid spaces tall by 4 dot grid spaces wide, and because we start the month of August on a Friday, I've decided to pop Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on the right side of the spread, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday over on the left. I really took up most of the space on my cover spread with my stickers that I made myself, so I'm going to be introducing a new element, only starting from this page because there just wasn't enough room on the previous. And that's these beautiful little stained glass inspired window stickers. They are so lovely. Some of them are going to be too big for me to use anywhere in the setup, but there are some smaller ones and I will make them work. Conveniently, they are quite Art Nouveau styled, some of them more than others, but I think the overall impression is there. And just to keep the colour scheme feeling really consistent and to give me more things to layer with and overlap with, I'm using some of my pink and green washi tapes that are a pretty good colour match for the rest of the spread to give a little bit of extra something. These stickers are on cardstock, which is good because they're quite fragile, so that makes them a little bit more robust, but they can be really difficult to remove from their backing. You kind of have to go slowly and carefully. Also, one thing I did not consider when I was making my stickers, and I was definitely too lazy to get back into Design Space and make more, was adding a little initial for each day of the week that could sit above the calendar. So instead of making a sticker for that one, I'm just going to be using a green marker that fits quite nicely with my theme. Shout out to my tiny marker swatch book for helping me find the right one. I have a video about that in case you're keen. This marker is one of the calligraphs from Archer & Olive. Their calligraphs seem to come in seasonal collections, so you can't probably get this exact one anymore because I got it 2 years ago, but they do have similar ones around. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking, so let's turn the page and move on to the next spread. I posted a flip through recently of my first journal that got me through the first half of this year, and I noticed some things that I could improve upon to go into the second half of the year to make my journal a bit more efficient. Kind of like a mid-year stock take to see which spreads I was using and which spreads I was using less and how I could alter things to be more effective. And this spread is the first place you're going to see some changes show up, and that's because instead of tracking 6 habits, I'm paring it right back to 3. I'm going to be setting up 3 tiny little calendar habit trackers, but they really don't need their own page at that size, so I've adapted the layout to have 3 tiny calendars across the top. I've kind of divided the spread in half horizontally, and then the spaces in the bottom where I've added pink second line highlights are going to be where I place my usual kind of reflection and goal setting areas. For the entire first half of the year, I really didn't use more than 3 of the habit tracking spaces on my habit trackers across the entire 6-month period, so there was no point adding more than that if I wasn't needing them, but we can always change going forward if I find that I start needing those things again. That's the beauty of the bullet journal. Underneath the habit trackers, I've divided the spread into 4 as well, so divided each page in half, and it made the most sense to continue that layout for the top part of the page, but just devote one of those quadrants to some decoration, to some pretty stuff, because I do really enjoy my pretty stuff. And that decoration quadrant will also serve as a place for me to pop down my habits heading, just as soon as I wrestle the sticker backing off this sticker, because this one was particularly difficult. I actually ripped one of the tiny little tendrils off this one in the process, but that's okay, I can just reattach it in approximately the right spot with my little sticker tweezers and no one need ever know. If you are interested in the changes I'm making to my journal based on the observations I made while flipping through my previous one, I actually wrote a post about it on my Substack recently. You can find a link to my Substack newsletter down in the description in case you want to find out more. I came up with a few steps that you can follow in case you want to try something similar for your own journal and review where you're at and improve on the spreads that you're currently using if you find that they aren't serving you quite as effectively as they probably could. The headings for the 4 sections along the bottom are for goals, obviously a place to set goals for the month, favorites for anything that I'm enjoying at the time, anticipating for anything I'm looking forward to, and working on for anything that I am paying extra attention to improving over the course of the month. That's this spread done, so let's turn the page and move on to our next one. The spreads themselves that I'm including haven't actually changed from July or from my previous journal too much. I'm just tweaking them to make sure that they are working as well as they possibly can. And this spread is definitely getting a little tweak. This one is going to be my routine spread. I've lived without much routine for a really long time, but this year I have been craving it, so I've been using this spread from one month to the next to really test out what works well for me and what doesn't, and try to refine some routines for myself. And it's been hard going because I have some really non-routine-y habits. I have learned so far that I'm not really a morning person. I don't wake up crabby or anything like that, but I do find I do my best work in the afternoon and evening. I've played around a little bit with having a weekly routine where I do certain things on certain days. Haven't really got that one down yet, but I am still working on it. Something that has been working really well for me over the past couple of months is time blocking. So at the beginning of a new week or at the end of the previous one, I'll look at all the tasks I need to do for the following week and schedule them into a calendar. And I do tend to move things around once I get to the actual day, depending on what I'm feeling like doing in the moment. But as long as all the things get done, it doesn't really always matter which order they're in. It's also helped me to come to understand how long certain things actually take me versus how long I think things take me. It often ends up being longer than I thought it was, but I'm starting to get a pretty realistic grasp on that kind of thing. So that's what this spread is for: refining and tweaking and reflecting on routines. The left page is where the routines become something like a list. So the left column is for my morning and evening routines. I've been writing down evening routines and not giving them their own heading for months, so I'm going to fix that and give it its own heading this time. The right page is for my outline for a weekly routine, so same kind of deal, still a list, but things that happen on specific days rather than in the morning or in the evening. Those routines change from one month to the next because I'm still refining them, so it's useful to have a new iteration from one month to the next. That's the left page. The right page is for reflection on those routines. So 2 sections there, one for what's working and one for what's not, because without that information, all of these pursuits are kind of useless. And I'm using my floral windows again as the basis for where my headings for those will go. I had printed them as single line headings, but that's actually going to be too wide for the space I have, so instead I'm cutting them down to separate words and just rounding off the corners so it looks a bit more intentional, since the stickers themselves had rounded corners. In case you're curious, why yes, I have used my current favourite font for all of the headings for this theme. It is Cinzel Decorative. I'm obsessed with it at the moment, and if you want extra decorations throughout the words, all you have to do is add a little extra capital and it gives you something really fancy. I don't know how Art Nouveau it is, but they did have it on a Canva template for an Art Nouveau invitation, so I thought I'm gonna run with that. Here's a spread that I am entirely changing the layout of in order to make it more effective for the month of August, and hopefully also all the other months going forward too, if this works well for me. I'm changing my content planner from boxes for each individual video with a checklist in each one that is more or less the same from one video to the next, to instead an Alastair method table, so that I can just list out my workflow on the left side, list out the videos along the top, and then I can cross things off as I go without having to rewrite the same list over and over. Don't know how it took me months to work out that one needed to change, but here we are. It also uses a lot less page real estate, which means I'm left with more space to decorate, and that always makes me happy because I really do enjoy the decorating part of the creative bullet journal process. It's possible I haven't left myself quite enough room in the top row of the table there for the topic of the video. I don't have a lot of space there to write down what it is, so that's something I may need to expand going forward, but for now we're going to see how it works through August and refine as needed. I've kept my table pretty centered in the spread, so I'm going to be adding my decoration in 2 columns essentially, one on either side, closer to the outside edges of the page. Lace pattern PET tapes like this are so useful because you can orient them vertically and horizontally, and they work both ways. Not every washi tape pattern can quite get away with that. I would actually dearly love to see the washi tape shop re-release these ones in a washi tape with a release backing rather than just a PET tape. Sorry, I lost a little bit of footage there that we've skipped forward a touch in time. Everything else on my spreads is really matte, so I would have loved to have a matte version of these tapes to use as well. Unfortunately, the laces are quite shiny, but we will work with what we've got, and I still think the color match is good enough that I don't mind too much. It can just be really tricky to photograph, that's all. We've got one spread left to set up together. That is for the first weekly for the month of August, which I'm actually starting on the 4th because the first few days of August fall into the previous week for me because more of the days of that week were in July than in August, so those are back in my July setup, or they will be once I set them up on a live stream later this month. I had made all these beautiful frame stickers when I was cutting everything out for this setup, and then didn't really get the chance to use very many of them, so I thought this is their moment to shine right here on the weekly. I have positioned this one a little too low on the page, unfortunately, so I'm going to peel it up and reposition. I didn't have enough of the same shaped frame to do all of them, so I'm going to mix and match from the different styles that I have available. I also have some that are more circular, these ones are more arch-shaped, and I'm then going to run out, so we'll just add some corners in place of a few other ones. This means I've essentially divided the spread into 8 again, and so I'm going to use that space in the top left corner as decoration. I've also pre-printed and cut stickers of all of the days and dates for each of the weeklies for this month, so I'm going to layer those over some of my solid washi tapes as well, making sure I've got all of the colours of my theme represented on the page somewhat equally. I have a question for you. If you are a fairly consistent planner, someone who's been doing it for maybe a few years consecutively or longer, do you find that you have times of the year when you are more traditionally in a journal or planning slump than other times of the year? I have really been noticing this about myself this year because I have several years of data to look back at now. I tend to fall into my slump around March, April, and May, and then start to climb back out of it in what are the cooler months here in Australia in June, July, and August, because I can be in my office without the air conditioner on and sweating constantly. I think that has a lot to do with it. I'd be really curious to know if you've also been in Slump City this year, or if you have been thriving and using your journal every day. Let's have a chat about it, because there's no correct or incorrect way to use your journal, and leaving blank spaces is completely okay and acceptable. I'm just so curious about if you also have journal trends. Some shapes, even when they're not cut out of vinyl, are just harder than others to stick down to a page, and this circle was one of them for some reason. I accidentally tore it when I was peeling it up, so placing it back down on the page made it sit a little bit differently to how it would have if it was still intact, I think. I ended up having to peel and replace a few times for this one to get it to sit really nice and flush, and so that you can't tell that it was torn. We got there in the end though. We're about to have a very brief visit from my journaling quality control officer, my cat Mitsu. I can only assume that because he's popping in right at the end here, that he is just making sure everything is above board and approving the process before it goes to you on YouTube. He's very thorough like that. He's a good boss. Whenever I'm DIYing stickers for a setup like this, I go in with a bit of an idea of how I'm going to use things, but I always like to add some extra stickers that frame things out in the corners or can fill up spaces or overlap with things if I need them to, and that's what these little corners are. They were just a just-in-case kind of a thing that ended up coming in really handy. I knew I wanted to include one of my beautiful floral frame stickers up in the top left corner here, but I was having a bit of trouble finding one that didn't feel like it fought with the shapes of the frames that are where I'll be doing all of my weekly planning. So I did end up settling on a smallish one, a pink one in fact, which I had been planning to place a green one there, but the sizes just worked out better for the ones I had in the pink set. So I'm adding some extra green onto my decoration space up there so that a little bit of green will still peek through behind the pink frame. Only one last sticker to place, and then we are finished with my August setup and we can flip through from start to finish. She's a little bit whimsical, I love the colour palette, and after the absolute marathon that was setting up July, it felt so good to do something simple, easy, and quick. I'm really looking forward to jumping into this layout and seeing if the changes I've made to the spreads really do help me lock in and use the journal more and be more productive overall. It's going to be a nice little adventure, and I hope you'll come with me on that ride. Huge thanks to all of my channel members who voted for Art Nouveau in my poll for my theme last month. I'm sorry it took me a little bit longer, but I hope you enjoy the way it turned out. If this theme is not quite your vibe, here is an alternative August for you to check out. This one is in the Mystery Journal and it is a coquette aesthetic theme. Or if you prefer something a bit more dark academia, here's my August theme from last year.